Welcome into the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, and we have a great show for you guys today. We're going to get into the game 4 between the Panthers and the Oilers that happened on Saturday. 8-1 is what that finished at. There's a lot to talk about from that game, so we're going to spend the most of this podcast talking about it. Our first segment, of course, will be breaking down, as it always is, that game 4. And then our second segment will be dedicated to, is there a momentum shift in this Stanley Cup Finals from that game 4 win? We'll talk about McDavid's comments after the game as well in that segment. Segment 3, we'll be talking about the top potential free agents for this summer, who's available, where they might end up, and how much are they going to cost. Our fourth segment of the night will be talking about McDavid breaking Wayne Gretzky's record for most assists in a playoff run. I also will ask the question if Connor McDavid needs to break the record for most points total in a playoff run for the Edmonton Oilers to win this series. And then our fifth and final segment, we will be previewing the Oilers-Panthers Game 5 that will happen tomorrow. But before, as always, we get into all of that, I would love to remind you guys that if you want to support the show in any way possible, use the tips and donations link down or on the screen right now at the GSMCpodcast.net. It does go a long way to support the creators here at the GSMC Sports Network, so use the tips and donations link at GSMCpodcast.net if you want to help support us creators more. Without further ado, we're going to get right into our first topic of the night, a little game recap of the Oilers-Panthers Game 4. So usually in game recaps, I talk about the goals and the big momentum switches during the game, and I talk about the roller coaster of watching a live sporting event, especially the Stanley Cup Finals. Well, for this game, I think that it would end up being 30 minutes if I broke down all the goals from this game. 8-1 for the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, this was ridiculous. Truly, this was an absolutely ridiculous game. 3 goals by the Edmonton Oilers in the first period alone, 3 goals in the second period, and 2 in the third. What went wrong for the Oilers in this game? Pretty much nothing. Of course, they get on the board with a shorthanded goal from Mattias Janmark and Connor Brown. Initially watching this goal happen, I said to myself, oh no, here we go again for the Oilers. Because on Friday, if you guys watched the Friday podcast, I talked about how the Edmonton Oilers needed production from their superstars and how Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid needed to show up in this series and show up in this game specifically. Well, their first goal was from Mattias Janmark and Connor Brown, a pair of fourth-line players, on the penalty kill. And I really thought to myself, oh no, this is bad. This is not going to end well. Well, they get another goal from Adam Henrique, from Mattias Janmark and Mattias Ekholm. Once again, I'm questioning this. And then it's Vladimir Tarasenko that gets the 1 goal for the Panthers to make it a 2-1 game. This was midway through the first period. When this goal went in, I thought that this game was going to get scary for the Oilers. Truly, I did. I thought that this goal was a great goal from Vladimir Tarasenko. It was a tip-in from the point from a Gustav Forsling shot. And I thought that this goal really was going to propel the Panthers, as we kind of have seen. The Oilers got on the board first in that Game 3 loss, and it was just really much the Panthers from that goal that they got. But for this game, it was just different, and it was the Oilers that really, really went out there and played some fantastic hockey. This third goal by the Edmonton Oilers really let me know that this game is going to be different than the ones that I saw before. First off, the Oilers fought back after giving up a goal, which is huge for them. Something that they haven't done all series long is show that resiliency when they've given up a goal. And it's also a goal from Dylan Holloway, Leon Draisaitl, whose names I called in that Friday podcast, especially Leon Draisaitl. This is his first point of the series, this assist here. They need him to be that over a point per game player. Most of this playoff run here for Leon Draisaitl, he was a 2-point per game player, and then the Stanley Cup Finals hit, and he has just kind of not been existent for the Edmonton Oilers. He also didn't play too well in that Dallas Stars series for them either. So this goal for the Edmonton Oilers, where it's Dylan Holloway scoring and it's from Leon Draisaitl, is huge. It was really huge, and it let me know that, hey, this game's different than the ones that I've seen before, and it went all downhill from here. Fourth goal for the Edmonton Oilers. This was Connor McDavid's first goal of the Stanley Cup Finals in his career and of this playoff run. It's from Zach Hyman. It's from Evan Bouchard. Evan Bouchard gets a point as well in this on this goal, which another name I called. Connor McDavid was doing his part in the first, or at least in that game 3. I think he had an assist on 3 out of the 4 goals that the Oilers scored in this series before Saturday. He assisted on 75% of their goals. So it really is not on him at that point. We're really looking at the other guys to step up. And for him to start scoring, because he had 3 assists, he didn't have a goal yet. Well, he also gets a goal. It's from Hyman and Bouchard. And then Darnell Nurse gets a goal. And no, I'm not going to stop with the Darnell Nurse hate. It will continue. Just because he gets a goal in an already blowout game doesn't make him worth $9.25 million and the second highest paid player on this Edmonton Oilers team. But nonetheless, it's Darnell Nurse from Connor McDavid from Zach Hyman. I will say Darnell Nurse had a very great game in this one. He was fantastic defensively, and he added a goal, which was impressive. Their power play also kind of got set astray in this game as well. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins scores on the power play with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid getting the assist. Chris Knobloch, or Carter Knobloch, Chris Knobloch, the Edmonton Oilers coach, he split up the lines for this game, and he put Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on the second line with Leon Draisaitl, which for almost all of this season, when Knobloch took control as head coach of this Edmonton Oilers team, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has been playing on that first line with Zach Hyman and Connor McDavid. For this game, they move him down to that second line. He's playing with Leon Draisaitl and Dylan Holloway. And Evander Kane was scratched, or Evander Kane is injured, so they put Warren Foegele all the way up to the first line left wing from the fourth line, which is where he started this playoff series out. But Warren Foegele is a fantastic player in his own right, and he played fantastic in this game, and really that switch was huge for Knobloch. And when you look at it, it really does make a difference. It got the most out of the guys that it needed to get the most out of. And then Ryan Nugent-Hopkins scores on a power play. Dylan Holloway played fantastic. He got a second goal of the game with assists by Connor McDavid, Corey Perry, and Ryan McLeod from Dylan Holloway. And Warren Foegele is the 8th and final goal for the Edmonton Oilers in this game. I mean, what else can you say but dominant performance from the Edmonton Oilers? And it all starts with Connor McDavid earning the first star of the night. 1 goal, 3 assists, 2 shots on goal. He was a +2, or he was a +3, I think, actually, in this game. This guy was fantastic. Just truly something special in this one. Breaks one of Wayne Gretzky's records. What more can you say about a Connor McDavid guy that's really trying to put his all out there? He had some comments after the game that we'll get into in this next segment that I do believe would really fire up the team behind him. Connor McDavid was fantastic. All throughout the ice, this was the game that we were looking for Connor McDavid in this series here. He is the most talented hockey player in the world. In my opinion, he is the most talented hockey player to ever step on ice. He is something special, and he shows it in this game, and we were waiting for that. 3 assists is, doubles his series tally. He now has 6 assists in this Stanley Cup Finals. 4 assists away from another Wayne Gretzky record for most assists in a single Stanley Cup Final series at 10. And Connor McDavid is definitely going to need to break some more of Wayne Gretzky's records if they want to win this series, but he is definitely primed to do so. He is a fantastic hockey player, and he really does make everybody around him so much better. It's really the production that he gets out of Zach Hyman that I look at that and I go, okay, this Connor McDavid is clearly a step above if you're given a guy like Zach Hyman, who was definitely not a 50 goal scorer when he was in Toronto. He was more like a 20 goal scorer in his career in Toronto. You take him onto the Edmonton Oilers, put him on the line with Connor McDavid. Now he scores 50 in a season. The mark of a superstar and the mark of a fantastic player is not what he does for a game. It's what he does for his teammates around him and how he can make his team better. Connor McDavid really exemplifies that. He makes everybody around him better, and he did so in this game to the utmost degree. But for our second star of the night, it's Dylan Holloway, the young guy here for the Edmonton Oilers, former first-round draft pick by the Edmonton Oilers. A part of this core that they kind of have kept together and really built through the draft and built through, training these guys through practice and building them up to where they're at in their career. Dylan Holloway, 2 goals, 1 assist, +3, wasn't out there for a goal against. Played some fantastic two-way hockey and really played some fantastic offensive hockey. It's 2 goals for Dylan Holloway, who is getting the chance on a line with Leon Draisaitl on that second line and really showing why he needs to, why he warrants those minutes. He doesn't get really power play opportunities, but all of his production does come 5-on-5, and it's really impressive whenever he's able to do that. Dylan Holloway is a fantastic forward, and he's going to be really good for a very long time. And if he's turning out these performances in a Stanley Cup final series, it really makes me confident in saying that 2 goals in a Stanley Cup Finals game where your backs are against the wall is huge for the Edmonton Oilers. It really goes it goes to show the momentum switch that they're looking to get out of this series and out of this game here that they got. It is now going to a Game 5 back in Sunrise, Florida. So, a lot of talk about did the Panthers kind of not play their A game because they want to win the Stanley Cup on home ice. I think that is complete, for lack of a better term, bullcrap. I think that truly there is nothing behind a team trying to lose. It's the same thing that we're seeing in the NBA Finals. I truly don't think a team would ever lose on purpose just to win the championship on their home court or home ice. I just think that the Edmonton Oilers were better on the day, and they truly were better on the day. They were fantastic in this one in every facet of the game, defensive, goaltending. They got Sergei Bobrovsky out of the net, who we were talking about having one of the best goaltending performances in a Stanley Cup final of all time. So, pushing him out of the net was huge for the Edmonton Oilers. Just all across the ice and all across this game, it was the Edmonton Oilers dominating, and we're going to see how much this affects the series going forward. We're going to see how much this affects the series going forward. If it does, this could be a very deflating loss for Florida Panthers team that, was riding so high going into this game, and then just losing by 7 could be soul crushing. So we'll see how this does affect them and how it does affect it going forward. But I'll wrap it up for our first segment of the night, talking about the game recap of the Oilers-Panthers. When I come back, we will be talking about whether or not this game really had that momentum shift that we're going to see in the Stanley Cup Finals, enough to make the Stanley Cup Finals results change with a 3-1 series lead now for the Florida Panthers.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I will be going right into our second segment of the night, talking about whether or not there is going to be momentum shift in the Stanley Cup Final due to that dominant Game 4 out of the Edmonton Oilers. But before we get into that, I would love to remind you guys that if you want to become bigger part of the show than you guys already are, support the show more than you guys already do, use the tips and donations link at the GSMCpodcast.net. It goes a long way to support the creators here at the GSMC Sports Network, and it does mean a lot. It does mean a lot to us getting any little bit of support that we do from you guys. So going right into our second segment of the night, talking about the momentum shift in the Stanley Cup Final here. Very impressive win by the Edmonton Oilers. 7-goal win by the Edmonton Oilers. 8-1. Like, what more can you say? What more superlatives can you use for this game? I talked about on Friday whether or not the Edmonton Oilers feasibly can come back from 3-0 down. I gave you guys the history of a 3-0 comeback in the NHL. I'll run it down a little bit more again, or a little bit more for you guys. 4 times in NHL history has teams come back from a 4-0 deficit. It happened in 2011 with the San Jose Sharks when they lost or in 2012 with the San Jose Sharks when they lost to the Los Angeles Kings. In 2011, it happened with the Chicago Blackhawks. Or 2010, it happened with the Chicago Blackhawks on the Vancouver Canucks. It happened again in the 90s, I believe, and then it happened in 1942. The 1942 one is the one that's the most memorable because it happened in a Stanley Cup Final between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Detroit Red Wings. But albeit that happened in 1942. So as I always say, take that with a grain of salt when you're looking that far back in the past for these sports stats, because it's a lot to go on, but it is 1942, so doesn't really correlate to today's NHL game at all. But are the Edmonton Oilers able to join that list and become only the second team to do it in the Stanley Cup Finals and the 5th team to do it in the NHL, the 6th team to do it in the major 4 sports leagues in North America? As the only other, it's happened 4 times in the NHL. It's only happened 1 time in all of the other sports leagues. It happened to the Red Sox. It happened in a Red Sox-Yankees series in early 2000s. But for the Edmonton Oilers, what makes them different? 3 times this year, they lost 3 games in a row in the regular season. They were all followed by win streaks. The first one was an 8-game win streak. The second one was a 16-game win streak, which is one of the longest in NHL history. And the last one was a 5-game win streak. They are a streaky team, and they have always been a streaky team. If you want to correlate that, if you win 4 games in a row, you win a Stanley Cup Final here. They won 8 wins, 16, and 5 in a row, following 3 losses. Like I said, they're a streaky team, and they definitely can do it. They have the mental fortitude to bounce back from one of those, from a losing streak, right? For the Edmonton Oilers, there is something different about them. Of course, they just have, they have McDavid, they have JioSaavn, they have Evan Bouchard, they have, all of these fantastic depth pieces that are great scorers like Zach Hyman, Evander Kane, Warren Fogle, Connor Brown, Corey Perry, Matthias Janmark, Matthias Ekholm. These guys are producing for the Edmonton Oilers. And you figured out finally how to beat Bobrovsky. Are we seeing a perfect storm here in Edmonton where you have all of these things are going your way, and it seems like you have, as I say, the momentum here in this series? You need to win 3 games straight now. You just need to win 3 here. One of them is going to be at home, and what goes for them is they now are riding on this huge high from that Game 4 going into Florida tomorrow for that Game 5. Riding on this huge high. And if they're able to get that upset win in Florida tomorrow, which we will be talking more about in our 5th and final segment of tonight's podcast, whether or not I do believe that the Edmonton Oilers can win that game and what that looks like. If they're able to win that game, Now you're thinking, okay, Alberta game 6. And then in a game 7, anything can happen here. This could get really interesting very fast if the Florida Panthers were to lose this game 5. After the game of game 4, Connor McDavid was, I don't know the exact question that prompted this response, but he said, now we got to do a job in game 5 and drag them back to Alberta, which I think is absolutely hilarious. I think that is a perfect encapsulation of exactly what they truly do need to do. Is they just need to not have a repeat performance here of this game 4, but they do need to dominate in a game 5 here. They don't want to play in a close game against the Florida Panthers, because the Florida Panthers have shown time and time again that they win close games, and they definitely can win another close game and to finish out this series. You don't want this performance that they had in game 4 to be for naught. You don't want, I mean, you need to get this game 5. How soul crushing would it be to win by 7 goals in a game 4? Feel like everything's going your way. Feel like the world is moving in your favor, and then to go into Sunrise, Florida, and watch them lift the cup. Watch Aaron Ekblad and Alexander Barkov just take that cup off the stands and lift it high. In Game 5, that would be absolutely soul-crushing for McDavid and for JioSaavn and for this Edmonton Oilers team. That really, this entire season, they've been all over the place. In late November, they were 9-18-4 or 9-18-2, maybe 9-18-2. They were not even close to a playoff spot. They were like a bottom 5 team in the NHL at that point. In mid-November or late November. They fired their coach. They go on a 16-game win streak. They completely turn the season around, and then you get to the playoffs, and you're riding this high from that regular season comeback, and you dismantle the LA Kings. You fight hard to beat the Canucks in 7. You beat the Stars in 6 in a pretty dominant Western Conference Final performance, and now you're in the Stanley Cup Final, and now you have the Florida Panthers. You go down 3-0. You claw back in that Game 4. Just to lose in a Game 5, I mean, that would be absolutely soul-crushing for this Edmonton Oilers team that has really gone through a lot in this season. We'll see, we'll see how it plays out on the ice. Florida Panthers are favored in this game. However, truly, momentum is a huge thing in sports. You really can feel it in a lot of different areas in sports, and I think that the Edmonton Oilers really feel that way and really have that, moxie about them when they're going into this Game 5 here in Sunrise, Florida. I can't wait for tomorrow and can't wait to watch that game because it's going to be telling for the rest of the series here. What went wrong for the Panthers in this game? They were due for a kind of defensive breakdown. They play a very physical and high-paced style, and if the Oilers kind of are on their game, the Oilers are favored in that. I truly believe that. In this game, I think Paul Maurice, the Florida Panthers head coach, got interviewed during the game, and he was asked, "Are you guys going to switch up anything defensively here?" And he just said, "No, this is our game here. This is how we play. This is the style of hockey that we have created ourselves playing." So we'll see if he does switch up from that kind of high-intensity defensive style where you could be prone to breakouts and prone to mistakes, and if things start snowballing for you, they go downhill real fast. We'll see how, the adjustments that Paul Maurice will make. They're up 3-1 in this series. They're not the ones that needed to be frantically changing their lines. They weren't the ones that needed to be frantically, giving out speeches in the locker room after the game or whatnot. They're still feeling very confident in the series. They still need to win one of the next 3, which for a Florida Panthers team that has been here before, of course losing to the Vegas Golden Knights last year. They've been here before. They know what it takes to win, although they were out on the other end of it last season. We'll see how they perform when they're, when they finally have to answer some questions that are being asked of them. I think that they've had they haven't had an easy, but they've had a very, sound playoff run to this point. Handling the Lightning in 5, handling the Bruins in 6, handling the Rangers in 6. They were they have really seemed like the better team in every series. And in this series, of course, going up 3-0, they seemed like the better team. But after that Game 4, you got to start asking some questions of the Florida Panthers. And we'll see what how they come out in this game. In this Game 5, really how they're going to react when it comes down to a Game 5 where they just got dismantled in a Game 4. So we'll see. The game will be played tomorrow. I can't wait for that game. We'll talk more of it on the fifth and final segment of tonight. But I will take my third break of the night, and when I come back, we will be talking about the top potential free agents for this summer, and where they might end up.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're getting right into our third segment of the night, talking about the top potential free agents for this offseason here. One of them is playing in this series that we're watching right now between the Oilers and the Panthers. It is the Florida Panthers, is Sam Reinhart. I only think that talks aren't happening for Sam Reinhart because they are in the midst of a Stanley Cup final run. I truly do believe that the Florida Panthers will... Sam Reinhart led that team in points this season. There's no way they let him walk for free. He's coming off of a $6.5 million contract. He'll probably make in the neighborhood north of $8 to $9 million in his next re-sign contract. But I do think it will be with the Florida Panthers for Sam Reinhart. But just going down the list from highest points for these free agents, next up would be Steven Stamkos. He was a 40 goal scorer this season. Sam Reinhart had 57 goals this season. Absolutely ridiculous season from Sam Reinhart, coming really out of nowhere. But for Steven Stamkos, it is a 81-point season, 40 goal scorer from the former first overall draft pick back in 2008. Steven Stamkos has had a very fantastic career with the Tampa Bay Lightning. However, he's 34. So that's the risk that you're taking by signing Steven Stamkos here. He's coming off of an $8.5 million cap. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have been reluctant to have talks with him. I saw reports that that Steven Stamkos' camp is very unhappy with the lack of contract talks with Steven Stamkos and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So there is a chance that he does walk. Of course, there was, I think it was 2018 offseason, I think it was, that Steven Stamkos was a pending free agent, and it looked like he wasn't going to sign, and it looked like the Toronto Maple Leafs were maybe going to make a play for him, and then he ended up going back to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we've seen this story before. However, I think it is different this time. He is 31 or 34 years old here, coming to kind of the tail end of his career. So we'll see if he does move on from the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we'll see where he goes, as I cannot predict if he were to move on from the Tampa Bay Lightning, where he would go, or even who would want him. I don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs would be in play for him this time coming around. Maybe the Hurricanes, although they're in a little bit of cap trouble this offseason. Maybe a team like the Ottawa Senators would make sense for Steven Stamkos. Maybe a Dallas Stars if they have the cap space. Maybe a Minnesota Wild makes a little bit of sense. But I think that really he could go kind of anywhere that has money for him. So we'll see. The next guy is Jake Gensel from the Carolina Hurricanes. I did see that him and his camp loved Carolina and loved kind of the culture they had going around there, and he wants to go back to the Hurricanes. So, albeit the Hurricanes wanting him back, he will be a Carolina Hurricane next season. Of course, he was dealt at the deadline by the Pittsburgh Penguins, where he played most of his career, or all of his career up to this point at. So, we'll see where Jake Gensel goes, but it seems like he wants to go back to Carolina. The 77 points in 67 games played this past season, very impressive in a contract year. Coming off of a $6 million contract, you could expect that to go up. I think he'll be around $7.5 million is where he would sign at, but you don't really know this stuff until the market goes, and we'll see. Next guy, RFA, Lucas Raymond. Of course, that will be tenured by the Detroit Red Wings, and nothing will come from that. So Lucas Raymond won't really be on the market. But the next guy is very interesting, Jonathan Marchessault. I think this guy could be the talk of the town for the free agency market. This guy, a fantastic goal scorer for the Vegas Golden Knights, really helped them in a lot of their cup runs, or in their cup run in 2023 and 2018. Big part of that franchise has been Jonathan Marchessault. We'll see what contract he gets. He's 33 years old. The problem with free agency is the problem with free agency in all sports is you're kind of overpaying for a guy that, one, the other teams didn't think that was worth the contract, and two, it's always going to be older guys, because in every sport you are under team control for the first few years of your career. So really, no guy under the age of 27 or 28 is going to be really available for guys. But then there's guys like Martin Necas, who is an RFA for the Carolina Hurricanes, who the right winger for the Hurricanes can definitely, he's trying to force a trade, trying to move somewhere. I talked about how him for Laine could make sense for the Columbus Blue Jackets. That could be a good deal. But a lot of these guys in free agency are RFAs or older UFAs, and Jonathan Marchessault fits in that older UFA guy, coming off of a $5 million contract, though. So if he wants around that neighborhood again, I think so many teams will be lining at the door to try to sign him, because he is a fantastic player, especially for that money. Joe Pavelski is a pending UFA, but he is retired, so he won't be there. Seth Jarvis is a pending RFA. He'll get re-signed by the Hurricanes if they're able to figure out their cap situation. Matt Duchene could be a very interesting one. 65 points in 80 games played this season. Kind of revitalized his career a little bit with the Dallas Stars. Of course, going all the way to the Western Conference Finals with them this past season. Very impressive one he had in 2023 and 2024 for the Dallas Stars. He's 33 years old again, but he's a great center. He's a good two-way guy still at this point of his career. A guy that a lot of teams are going to look to try to pick up. He might be another one. Him and Jonathan Marchessault could be two guys that really move people in this free agency. And I think Matt Duchene will want a lot of money. He's coming off of a $3 million contract, but that's after a couple of pretty disappointing years. This year, 65 points. He played at .81 points per game ratio. This guy could be a guy that warrants a lot of money in free agency. Matt Duchene could be a guy that I would look out for. Maybe if you're a middle-of-the-road team trying to kind of make a push, getting a second-line center could be huge for them. Maybe a team like the Islanders could go out and get him. I think that would make a little bit of sense. Winnipeg Jets could go out and get him. That might make a little bit of sense. The Vancouver Canucks, if they have money, can go out and get him. So a lot of teams that are trying to make a little bit of a push here to become cup contenders can add that guy. Put him on the second line, third line, and he would, be very, very vital for a franchise. You also got guys like Sean Monahan from the Winnipeg Jets, who can play all over the ice and be a big role coming up in free agency. He only was at $2 million. That's going to go way up. He's going to probably ask for 6.5. 59 points in 83 games played. Very impressive what Sean Monahan did this past year, especially in a contract year. Jonathan Drouin from the Colorado Avalanche. This guy is the one that took over for Valery Nichushkin when he had to leave in the Stanley Cup playoffs this past year on that first line, and he played pretty well. He could definitely be a guy that warrants a lot of money. Very skilled forward, puts up a lot of goals on the right team. We'll see where Jonathan Drouin goes. I think that's one of the more interesting ones. And then we finally get to our biggest defensive free agency guy. It's Shane Gostisbehere from the Detroit Red Wings. 56 points in 81 games played. He was a minus 16, however. He made $4.5 million last year. A guy like Shane Gostisbehere could warrant a good amount of money, so it would be very interesting to see what he gets as probably the top defenseman in this free agency market. Of course, you also have Phil Peronic, who could get that spot. Brady Shea, who could be the top defensive guy. I'm not seeing Brandon Montour maybe if he does go from the Florida Panthers, but there are a lot of Florida Panthers on this list, but I do believe that they will just be re-signed by the Florida Panthers when the Cup run finishes up, as they do have a good amount of money going into this offseason here. Maybe a guy like OEL does walk for them, though, who only 32 points in 80 games played. I think that's a guy that you're willing to kind of give up. Other guys that are big name free agents here: Rowan Fogle, Anthony Duclair could be a big name, Tyler Bertuzzi, Anthony Mantha from the Vegas Golden Knights could be a big guy. I think Elias Lindholm could get a lot of money. Of course, he was on that he was on that Gaudreau, Kachuk, Lindholm line in Calgary. Moved to the Vancouver Canucks this past season. Didn't have a good one. It was a disappointing one for Elias Lindholm, but he's a fantastic forward, and you know that skill set's there, and he's going to warrant a lot of money wherever he goes. So, a lot of guys that had weird years, I would say. The best one being Sam Reinhart, who I do think goes back to the Florida Panthers. Steven Stamkos, I don't see him ever leaving Tampa, but if he does, it gets weird. And then just a Jonathan Marchessault, who is a 40-goal scorer, could definitely warrant a lot of money wherever he goes. A guy like Matt Duchene, who has been a fantastic player all of his career, a perennial all-star in this league, can get a lot of money. So I think it's a very deep free agency class, is what I would say. There is a lot of guys that look very good. Of course, you're not looking at any of the RFAs, although Matthew Beniers is an RFA, but he'll, of course, be re-signed by the time. Kirill Marchenko's an RFA. He'll, of course, be re-signed by the time. But for these UFAs, if a team is unable to re-sign them, I don't think the Vancouver Canucks will try to re-sign Elias Lindholm, for example. He'll be there on the market. And, of course, when we do get a final list to look at, I will talk to you guys about where, I'm hearing that they could end up. But for right now, there are a lot of names to look out for in this re-signing phase. Steven Stamkos, probably the biggest one. Sam Reinhart having the most points this past season, and 57 goal scorer. He's an interesting one to look out for, what the Florida Panthers give him, as I would be shocked if he doesn't re-sign in Florida, as that team seems like it really wants to play together. But for the free agency class, it looks really good, it looks really deep, and it looks like you can do a lot with it if you're a new GM looking to bolster a team fast. There are a lot of teams kind of out there that are in that kind of should be in win now mode with, what they've done in previous years, but just aren't because their guys haven't stepped up. I'm looking at kind of like the Ottawa Senators, the New York Islanders, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Detroit Red Wings, all of these teams that should be doing good, especially in the Eastern Conference, but just are underperforming. So we'll see what they do, and we'll see who does resign. But that'll wrap it up for our third segment of the night. When I come back, we'll be talking about Connor McDavid breaking Wayne Gretzky's record, what that means, and if he needs to break more for this Edmonton Oilers team to win a Stanley Cup final.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're getting right into our fourth segment of the night, talking about Connor McDavid breaking a Wayne Gretzky record. I do have to add the A in there because he has so many. And to understand how crazy it is to beat a Wayne Gretzky's record, we're going to first talk about the legacy of Wayne Gretzky and how many records he really does have. He has 40 regular season record. Most goals in a career, most goals including playoffs, most goals in one season, most goals in one season including playoffs, most goals in 50 games from start of the season, most goals in one period, most assists including playoffs, most assists in one season, most assists in one season including playoffs, most assists in one game, most assists in one road game, most points including playoffs, most points in one season including playoffs, most overtime assists, most goals by a center in one season, most goals by a center in a career, most assists by a center in one season, most points by a center in a career, most points by a career one season, most assists in one game by a player in his first season. What kind of stat is that? Most assists in one game by a player in his first season. You guys get the point. He has every single record known to the hockey world, including a bunch of playoff records, most playoff goals in a career, most playoff assists in a career, most playoff points in a career, most assists one playoff year, most assists in one season or in one series. Actually, he doesn't have that one anymore. Leon Draisaitl has that one now. Most assists in final series at 10. This is one that I want to talk about a little bit more. 10 assists in one Stanley Cup final series. He did that in 1988. He did that in 4 games against the Boston Bruins, however. So a little bit different than what Connor McDavid might do. He might have to do that in 7 games if the Edmonton Oilers want to win this Stanley Cup. Of course, they have to take this to 7. But right now, Connor McDavid has 6 assists in one series, or in the final series. So he could definitely give Wayne Gretzky a run for his money in that statistic. But really, for Connor McDavid, he needs to. Well, let's look at what he needs to do. Really, I think that he needs to break the most points in one playoff year at 47 that Wayne Gretzky has in 1985. Of course, they won the Stanley Cup Finals in that season. Wayne Gretzky did it in 18 games. Connor McDavid has currently played 22 games, so a little bit different. Once again, you're going to need to take. It's a Wayne Gretzky stat, so you're going to need to take it into context. Wayne Gretzky was the greatest hockey player to ever live for a reason. 47 points in 18 games in the playoffs is absolutely ridiculous, but hey, that's Wayne Gretzky for you. But as terms of the record that Connor McDavid just broke, he just broke the most assists in a playoff run record. It was 32, and very, very impressive that Connor McDavid's able to break a record like that from Wayne Gretzky, of course, an idol of Connor McDavid. It's a shocking one that he is able to do that, and it seems like we keep on calling his number to kind of perform here in these playoffs time in and time out, because I guess the rest of the team is just underperforming what he needs them to do. For the Edmonton Oilers, Wayne Gretzky is just Connor McDavid is just a step above any other team or any other player in the NHL right now. And for Wayne Gretzky, he was an absolute step above. And Wayne Gretzky helping his team lift 4 Stanley Cups. Connor McDavid is not Wayne Gretzky, and nobody can be. But what we can do is look at Connor McDavid having this kind of playoff run in a 2024 setting where the goaltenders know how to drop down into a butterfly now compared to back in 1980s. I'm not comparing eras here because that gets a little bit dirty. However, I will say that the goaltending this year, if you put Sergei Bobrovsky in a net in 1980, I think he is looked at as the greatest goaltender of all time. That's just my opinion, though. But really, it is just impressive. It is really impressive what Connor McDavid has been able to do throughout this postseason. You really gotta look at his run in this postseason and 33 assists now. 30 is he at 30? What is he at? I think he's at 33 assists, 6 goals for 39 points in 22 games. Very, very impressive. Just so crazy the stats that he's putting up. 4 points in a elimination Stanley Cup Finals elimination game. Backs against the wall and he produces. He's gonna need to break this 47 points record though. He is 8 away, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. No, sorry. He is 9 away. He has 38 points. He has 32 assists. 31 was Wayne Gretzky's record. So he has 32 assists right now. He is 9 points away from breaking the all-time points in a single playoff run record, which, I mean, that's as impressive as it gets, man. It's a Wayne Gretzky stat that's lasted for almost 40 years now. It's crazy that it's been 40 years since Wayne Gretzky has played hockey. But truly, there's some things that Wayne Gretzky did that nobody thought would be broken. Of course, 92 goals in a season. That's 92 goals in a season will never be broken. 215 points in a season. Almost 2,000 or assists in a career. These things will never be broken. But for Connor McDavid to slowly erase Wayne Gretzky's name in record books and slowly put his name back, it really goes to show you how fantastic of a hockey player Connor McDavid is. And a little bit bigger conversation, Connor McDavid could end his career as the greatest Oiler of all time, because he's only 200 goals away from Wayne Gretzky's goal tally at 583. He's at 335 right now. He is only 400 assists away from Wayne Gretzky's assist record. If he continues at his pace that he's at, he could do that in 5 years. Break the assist record and break the goals record in the 200 gap. He scores 35 goals a year. He could do that in 6 years. He could take over goals in 6 years. He could take over assists in 5 years. Connor McDavid can legitimately do that stuff. This is, of course, the Edmonton Oilers records. This isn't overall career. And Wayne Gretzky only played how many years? 9 years with the Edmonton Oilers, I believe. 9 or 10 years with the Oilers. So a little bit different. Once again, Connor McDavid is already at that mark now with the Edmonton Oilers. But if he is able to, take over goals and take over assists and take over points in a career with the Edmonton Oilers, that would be very impressive. Of course, you think of Wayne Gretzky, you think of Edmonton. You don't really think of his time with the LA Kings. You don't really think of his time with the Rangers or the Blues. You think of his time with the Edmonton Oilers. So what Connor McDavid is doing, like I said, is absolutely, it's just something special. And every time he laces up the skates, every time he steps on the ice, he's doing something different that is just we haven't seen before in my lifetime, and most people haven't seen since they watched maybe Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky in the 1980s and 1990s, 1980s and 1990s. So cherish what Connor McDavid is doing, because truly it is remarkable. The most assists in a playoff run is a very hard thing to do. He's averaging over an assist per game, that in a playoff where everybody's upping the intensity, all the goaltenders are playing at a next level, and they're going through runs of games where they're not producing. They had 1 goal through 2 games in this Stanley Cup Finals series, and they're still finding ways to put points, and they have the top 3 point getters in these playoffs. The Edmonton Oilers do. it goes for their playoff run. They're definitely able to make a run at the Stanley Cup. I can't wait to see what they do in this Game 5, if they're able to continue this. But now Connor McDavid 9 points away from the all-time postseason record for most points. I don't think he's going to get to goals, which is at most goals in a playoff run is... I actually don't know that. I think it's around the 20s. So Connor McDavid will definitely not be getting to that mark. But very impressive what he has been able to do in this postseason. I just want to put into perspective really what he has done in this postseason to get the Edmonton Oilers and how, one-off this run is. I mean, we don't see this ever in Stanley Cup Finals or Stanley Cup playoffs history. So it's just a special thing to look at, and you really notice that you are in a historical moment here in the sport. So that'll wrap it up for our fourth segment of the night. When I come back, we will be previewing Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final. Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're getting right into our fifth segment of the night, previewing Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. For this Stanley Cup Finals, we're going to take a look at the lines here. The Edmonton Oilers look like they're going to go with their same lines that, of course, they're going to go with the same lines that worked with that Game 4. They're going to keep Evander Kane out. I think he just might be a healthy scratch for this game, as he was day-to-day, and he could have played, or he potentially could have played in that Game 4, but they held him out, and they scored 8 goals. So it's not because he didn't play. Evander Kane is, of course, a very talented forward. But for the Edmonton Oilers, they're just going to stick with what worked. And what worked was that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins switching down to the second line. He is now with Leon Draisaitl and Dylan Holloway. They're also going to keep Ryan McLeod on that fourth line, who was getting third or second line minutes in that Game 3. It did not work for them. So they're going to keep Ryan McLeod, Derek Ryan, and Corey Perry on that fourth line together, which has been a pretty good fourth line for them. Adam Henrique, Matthias Janmark, and Connor Brown will be that third line. And then for their defensive pairs, you have Mattias Ekholm and Evan Bouchard. Of course, that's been their top pair all throughout this postseason and pretty much all season long. Very impressive play from those two guys. So they're just going to stick with that. And Darnell Nurse, Philip Broberg is going to be that second defensive pair that you see. Brett Kulak and Cody Ceci on that third defensive pair are what they were doing in morning skate or morning practice this morning. For the Edmonton Oilers, it is a very solid team, and it definitely did work. But going over to the Florida Panthers side, they are going to put Evan Rodriguez up to that first line. They are switching Carter Verhaeghe and Evan Rodriguez. They are also... Are they doing anything else different? I think Ryan Lomberg going in... Yes, Ryan Lomberg is going to make his series debut here on that fourth line for the Florida Panthers. But really, they're going to keep the lines pretty much the same, as Evan Rodriguez has had a fantastic postseason run, and even more specifically Stanley Cup Finals. He is now getting that first line minutes with Alexander Barkov and Sam Reinhart. I'm interested to know. I'm interested to know for Evan Rodriguez and Carter Hagee, that switch, what that's going to do for the defensive style of that first line. Of course, that's been kind of their strong suit throughout this postseason and throughout the Stanley Cup Finals and their 3 games that they won in the Stanley Cup Finals. Having Evan Rodriguez on that second line and having Carter Hagee on that first line, we'll see what that switch will do for them. But they're going the same, really, that third line that's been working. Eetu Luostarinen, Anton Lundell, and Vladimir Tarasenko is going to be that third line that's kind of been there this entire postseason run. It's been very impressive. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then as for their defensive pairs, they are not going to switch up their D at all. It's Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad, Nico Mikola, Brandon Montour, and OEL and Dmitry Kulikov on their defensive blue line here for the Florida Panthers. So they're gonna that kind of tells me that they're gonna play at that same intensity and they're gonna just stick to their scheme here. It's worked. There's no reason to go against it. It makes sense. They definitely can get results by doing that. But you could also make the argument that the Edmonton Oilers kind of figured it out and could potentially exploit that. They're also likely to go with Sergei Bobrovsky in net over Anthony Solers, who did take over for Sergei Bobrovsky after he let up his 5th goal of the night on Saturday. But I think that is the right choice. Sticking with your hot goaltender, who is the Conn Smythe favorite at this point, is going to be crucial for this Florida Panthers team. This Game 5 is crucial for both teams. The Florida Panthers, I think, might need to win this game more than the Edmonton Oilers need to win this game. Of course, the Edmonton Oilers, if they don't win this game, they don't win the Stanley Cup Final. But I think you might be able to make an argument that if the Florida Panthers don't win this game, they might not win the Stanley Cup Finals because of it. I would be very worried going back to Alberta for a Game 6. Rogers Place has proven to be one of the most difficult environments in all of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And then you're tacking on top of that, they just won 2 games in a row. They're a really streaky team. They win a lot of games in a row following 3 losses. They've won 5, 8, and 16 throughout the regular season, as we already talked about. For the Florida Panthers, I would be looking at this as a must-win game. Truly, I would. Granted, anything can happen in this in a Game 6 or especially in a Game 7. But for the Edmonton Oilers, I think that they have less pressure on them. I think that they're just able to go out there and kind of play with the same mentality that they played in a Game 4. And I think that they could get a job done by doing so. So looking at the game lines, it is the Florida Panthers that are the favorite in this game. That makes sense. Nothing really goes to prove that that should be the other way. The Edmonton Oilers have been not great away from home in these playoffs, and the Florida Panthers have been a fantastic home team. They won 2 games in Sunrise, Florida, Game 1 and Game 2 in this series. So they're favored -135 to the Edmonton Oilers +114. I think that's implied odds of 57-43 for the Florida Panthers to win this game. I am going to predict... See, here's the thing. I predicted the Florida Panthers in 6. So it would make sense for me to go with the Edmonton Oilers. And I talk so much about the Edmonton Oilers throughout this entire show. And I talk so much, building up the Edmonton Oilers as saying that as they can, get a win here, get a result here, and it could be very impressive. I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers. I just think that the Florida Panthers ended here. I think that they are the better team. When I previewed the series, I said that they were the better team. I said Florida in 6. I said on a different show from the GSMC Sports Network, I said Florida in 5. So if the Florida Panthers win here, then that would be correct on that show, and I would take that. I think I'm going to go with the Panthers here. I really do believe that they finish it off here. I think that they're the better team, and I think that they took that absolute sucker punch to the throat as a wake-up call. The Oilers aren't going to lie down, but that just means that the Panthers have to play that aggressive, high-intensity style that has won them so many games in these postseason, and they're going to get this done. I think I'm going to go 2-1 for the Panthers take this Game 5 here. I think that Sergei Bobrovsky steals this one, but the defense from the Edmonton Oilers really keep them in this game, and I think that the Edmonton Oilers will have chances late in this game to tie it up, take it into overtime if they are able to convert on it. But I think that Sergei Bobrovsky is going to be able to shut the door enough on this Edmonton Oilers team to win this Florida Panthers the Stanley Cup, win Sergei Bobrovsky his first ever cup, the Florida Panthers their first ever cup. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for this Game 5. I think it will be very telling for the rest of this series. But that'll wrap it up for this Monday edition of the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you all for your support. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can leave a like and and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review on whatever you are listening to the podcast on, if you would like to. You could also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at the GSMC Sports Network. All of the support means so much for us, and thank you all again for tuning in to the GSMC Hockey Podcast. All of you guys have a fantastic evening.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to